Welcome to the Extraordinary Purpose Podcast, where we explore some of the truly difficult questions and challenges that parents and their families face every day. Whether it's the sometimes painful process of parenting teens and young adults, navigating relationships with your partner and children, or you discovering your purpose in relationship with yourself, we will bring heartfelt and vulnerable conversations to the table to support and empower you. Our mission is to help you create a lifestyle full of love, passion, adventure, and influence. Here we go.
Welcome to the Extraordinary Purpose Podcast with Erin and Chris. I, of course, am Erin, and I am here today for, wait for it, the handsome, extraordinary, magnetic, motivational, and inspirational Chris.
I am blushing right now. Also, I think I'm out of a job because I've done all of our
You're out.
intros. So literally, this is history in the making. This is Erin's very first time, going first, which that doesn't why is this her first time?
Don't know. I
You
just took
did
over
such a
today.
wonderful job.
Thank you,
I
honey.
think that one's going to land with people a lot better than mine. I think I'm too overpowering sometimes with my approach and my voice. I think the
Never.
softer, sweeter, more gentle approach might be the right approach.
Trust me, not
Not
always.
always? Okay, that's
Not
fair.
always.
We like
People
variety
like
around
your
here.
People like your loud intros.
Loud, over the top intros. And if you do like the soft intro or the over the top intro, then you're in the right place because, boy, Erin and I, we sit down every single week and we think about topics that you want to hear, not that just we want to share and talk about. Some of that gets mixed in too, but a lot of it is exactly what you say to us you want to know about. And
Mhm.
so I'm just going to kind of give everybody a little bit of an update. So, in case you don't know who we are, our full time job is every single day. Erin and I are life coaches for teens and young adults. So let's just get that out there. We have now coached, I think, thousands of teens and young adults over the past many, many years. Why do we do that? Because it's our passion, it's our purpose, it's something that we just recognize is such a needed thing, especially in 2025 with all the distractions and all the challenges. And we also know, Erin, I think you can probably attest to this too, but what we see when we're coaching your kids might be a little bit different from what you see on your side of the fence. Right, Erin?
Yes, definitely. And, something that we hear all the time, we do discovery calls with parents. Parents
Yeah.
find us maybe here, you're listening today, and you want to talk to us and learn more about what we do. People find our website and they book a call with us. And so we get the absolute privilege to get on the phone and Zoom calls like every day
Yeah.
with parents just like you and have these incredible conversations about your kiddos, what's going on, where they're stuck, where they're challenged, why you're frustrated and they're driving you absolutely crazy. And
That's
so
true.
one of the biggest things we hear all the time is, they're not taking my advice, they don't want to hear our
Yeah.
guidance. I have so much life experience and wisdom. I've been in their shoes and they don't want to hear it from me. It's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
We always tell parents we totally get it. As many of you know, we have 4 kids between the two of us, 2 teens and 2 young adults, and we are just as frustrated as you a lot of the time. That's partly why we created this process and this work is to take a little bit of the frustration and pressure off of you parents and hand those kids over to us for a while. And we work with them. And so the truth is that, all kidding aside, developmentally, young adults, older teens and young adults are like biologically inclined to crave autonomy and independence from their parents specifically. I hate to break it to you, but they don't want to hear it from you.
Yeah.
And, sometimes they'll hear it from older siblings, maybe an aunt or an uncle or something, but even then, they are so desperately craving and like looking outside of their family for answers, for mentors, for coaching, for inspiration and motivation. And it's never anything personal. You know, often we forget as parents what it was like when we were teens and young adults. And for many of us, I know this isn't always the case depending on your relationship with your parents, but we came back around. Like now I love my mom's advice and her most of the time and her suggestions. And, you know, we've worked on our relationship, my mom and I.
You
She's great
have.
now. She'll say, Erin, you know, when Skylar was visiting this past week or whatever, I noticed something. Are you okay if I give you a little insight? And
Yeah.
I'll say, sure, mom. But that took a lot of work to get to that point with her. But the point is that your kids will come back around. They will want to hear from you again, but they go through this phase at about 16-ish, sometimes sooner, and it lasts into their late 20s where they have a really hard time taking advice and suggestions and taking in your wisdom and life experience. And they desperately want other people. They want other people's guidance. That's why they go off to college. They want professors. They want other life coaches like Chris and I. And so I always tell parents we see it every day, so we think it's common knowledge. But a lot of parents feel very exasperated and frustrated and sad that they've gotten to this point when your child wants your knowledge and wisdom. They come to you for everything, and then boom, it's almost like overnight they don't want to hear anything anymore.
Mm.
And it's challenging. It's really challenging.
Yeah, it is. And we talked about the fact that yes, we're life coaches for teens and young adults. That's our passion. But I think the real joy is in speaking to parents every single day. There is so much joy in that because when we first talk to you, maybe you're feeling this way too. You're overwhelmed, you're frustrated, you're pissed off, you're angry, you're upset, you're worried, you're afraid. Like there's all these emotions that are communicated to us, expressed to us on these really important phone calls. And something that Aaron and I always make a point to make is that there is this tremendous amount of potential inside of their young adult. Tremendous. And they are wanting to figure it all out, wanting to figure out the answers, wanting to learn more about themselves, wanting to learn more about their future. But the very first thing that we've noticed and we've learned is in order to do that, they need to be in the right environment. The right environment. Because when they're at home, okay, and this is not a critique of your households, not at all. This is just the world that we live in. But in their current environment, their bedroom, their house, school, they are constantly distracted. 100% of the time, they are distracted. They're on their phones, they're on social media, they're with their friends, they're with school, and they're with their friends. The one place that they're not, that they need to be, is connected and with themselves. And so, something that Aaron and I noticed a long time ago, and something that we have nurtured and created from the very first conversation that we have with parents, by the way, to the very first conversation we have with teens and young adults, is we want for them to see the difference. For when you step into a different environment, one where there's no distractions, one where there's somebody sitting across from you that's judgment free, who loves you, who supports you, who believes in you, who sees your potential, and creates this open space for us to explore the most important topic, which is not math or science or history or any other topic. Those are all great, those are all super important too. But the most important topic that we talk about and connect with is who you are.
Because young adults really need the freedom. They need the flexibility, like Chris just said, to explore
Yeah.
and to explore on their grounds, on, you know, really looking at their passions and their curiosities. And what happens a lot of the time as parents, and again, we do this too, I do it often, our love comes across as lecturing, as advice giving. And it's because we have good intentions, because we love our kids. Sometimes it's out of fear because we're worried about them not figuring it out and we have the answers and they don't. And we know what's best for them because we've raised them.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big point to make is that, you know, when you've birthed these little people and raised them into young adults, like you have this different kind of attachment to them, rightly so. And they can sense that from you. They can sense that fear that you might have, and that like attachment to them. And when I said in the very beginning of this, it's like biologically they're inclined to want to detach from that. That scares them. It threatens their independence when they sense that you're trying to pull them so close. So when they get the freedom and flexibility to talk to Chris and I, for instance, or other mentors or coaches or professors or anybody outside of parents and family, they have the freedom to explore this curiosity that they have about themselves and what's important to them. And the truth is, interestingly enough, that curiosity and the process that Chris and I use to work with young adults leads them to this intrinsic motivation. When they start to understand who they are, what's important to them, they start creating meaningful goals. They start to see this vision that's pulling them into their future. They naturally get fired up. They naturally find this passion for like, right, what's next for me? They start to overcome their distractions organically because now they have this intrinsic motivation to move forward. So the very thing that we want for them, that often we're
Mm.
lecturing them about, and trying to give them advice on how to overcome things or threatening to take things away if they don't do A, B, or C, the process of them working with somebody else outside of their parents or their family helps to create this intrinsic motivation, and they start doing the things that we want them to do naturally. Hope that made sense.
It, and I think that the one reassurance that we want to give all of us, all of you,
Mhm.
is that your child wants a lot of the same things that you do. Trust us, they do. That's
Mhm.
what they communicate to us when we first talk to them. We start asking them some of these questions. It starts igniting some of their curiosity. But the key difference, the key shift, and the key difference in perspective is that they have to want some of these things for themselves. Okay,
Mhm.
including, by the way, personal development, including coaching, including looking at their goals, including doing well in school. And so when we're working with these young adults and we're working with parents on how to navigate this journey and this process, it's about shifting that perspective from us to them. And so in the very first conversations, that's what we do is we ignite their curiosity. We get them looking at themselves in a completely different way because usually when you're young, you're not looking at yourself the way that you need to be looking at yourself. You're not finding your passions. You're not leaning into your talents. You're not exploring your curiosities like Erin just said, right? And all of these things are what helps us learn and grow and start to move forward, which, by the way, as Erin said, is what ignites our motivation. When we have things that are important to us for our reasons, then we're going to focus in and do what we have to do. But if we're doing them because we think mom and dad are forcing us to do them, or Chris and Erin are forcing us to do them, guess it's just going to be a reaction and a fight and an argument. And that's the last thing that we want.
Mhm.
That gets us to our next thing that we've learned through all this coaching that we've done, which is I think I said this at the very beginning of today's episode, which is distraction is the absolute biggest block that we have in 2025. It is a big, big, big problem. It's something that Erin and I take very seriously. I know Erin, especially, is extremely passionate about this topic. So, Erin, you kind of want to like give us a little bit of an overview of kind of what we see on our side of the fence?
Yeah, I can do that. And I also think the way that I can sort of paint this picture is I just share a quick story from actually just from this morning. I took my son River to visit a college it was our first college visit today. And on the way there, we were talking about this very thing. And I was sort of talking out loud to myself about this in the car the other day. And so I kind of just reiterated it to him. But we have to recognize that we are, like Chris said, this decade we're living in, this year we're living in, this time in our culture is so filled with distraction,
Mhm.
every kind of distraction on every level. And we have to be extra, extra, extra intentional and purposeful about creating space and creating an environment, not just for our young adults, for all of us as like human beings to put everything away, other people's opinions, phones, screen time, social media, all of the things that are just pulling at us constantly to derail us, intentionally or unintentionally. We have to find intentional time to create space for us to focus in on these important parts of ourselves, who we are, what's important to us, what are our priorities. I was just talking to a friend on a hike yesterday about this sort of like phase in my life as I'm looking at this next half of my life, like asking myself these bigger questions. What's important to me? What do I want to experience for this next phase of my life? And so we have to do the same for our kids, these young adults. We have to really help them learn how to create that space of putting the distractions aside so they can focus in. And that's what I was explaining to River today, is to have balance. He's such a social kid. He's out constantly. He loves being around people and going to the parties and doing all the things. And we were talking about making sure he has some time throughout his week where he goes on a hike, he goes for a walk, he reads a book, something different. And so it's really, really, really important that our kids learn how to do that. And often, once again, if it's coming from parents, they see it as criticism, as a put down, as they're not doing something right again. When they find out how to overcome some of these distractions organically, they rub up against their distractions on their own. They're so much more likely to put the distractions aside and focus in on what's important. They have, like Chris said, they have to come to some of these conclusions on their own.
Yeah. So when you see your young adults as lazy, unmotivated, obviously distracted all the time, they're not productive, maybe they're not doing well in school, they're not clear on their future. That's a long list of things that parents or we see in our kids. But the one thing that Erin and I have noticed and learned, after all these years, and the reason we're sharing with you this today is because it's not about distractions. Distractions aren't going anywhere. We have to get better at navigating them so that we can focus. So this is really about focus. Okay, because when kids can focus, they're able to connect with themselves. They're able to be more curious. They're able to see their choices. They're able to make different choices. They're able to get better results. They're able to show up as better versions of themselves. And so the big difference between the way kids are at home, currently distracted all the time, and all those other symptoms that we just kind of reviewed, and then what they learn when they're in this type of environment, the real learning is to how to focus. Because as Erin said, the more times that they can break away from those distractions and connect with themselves, that's when the real change is going to start to happen.
Yeah, and I just want to end with this. I just want to say to parents, I think sometimes parents feel like they're giving up if they reach out for coaching or, whatever it is, therapy or mentorship or whatever, that they failed somehow. So this is like a last resort because they couldn't do it. And I really just want to say that that is not the case, parents. When you make a choice to reach out, to find other mentors and coaches for your kids to help them, to me, you are evolved. You have expanded, right? That is true personal development on the parent's part. When you can recognize, like, I'm giving all I can, and it's not that it's not enough, it's just time for something different. It means you're reading the room, you're understanding your child's developmental needs, and that's a beautiful thing. So if this resonates with you, and you do want to have a conversation with Chris and I, reach out to us. You can book a discovery call with us. There'll be a link in the show notes to do that. We would love to chat with you so you can learn more and we can learn more about your family. But have a great week, everybody. As usual, amazing to talk with you, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See you, everybody. See you next time. All right. Bye.
We are so thankful for you and your beautiful family, and hope you found something inside today's episode that brought you hope, inspiration, and most importantly, a path forward. If you're interested in evolving your relationship, giving your kids the most important gift of personal growth and development, or are a mom looking to reconnect with your confidence and become empowered in all areas of your life, then schedule a discovery call with us today. Our mission is to help as many families as possible find their purpose, and that starts with you. See you in the next episode, my friends.